It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today we're going to talk about Solid Invoice. Now, several of you have asked me about Invoice Ninja, and I have tried very much to install Invoice Ninja using Docker. I've used Invoice Ninja, their official Docker stuff. I've used several attempts with it from some other people who've made Docker stuff as well. And it just gives me errors kind of no matter how I do it. And I'm looking through the errors and it's not real clear what's happening or what's wrong. But I feel like it's a build issue with Invoice Ninja. It's such a difficult thing. And so not only did I try Invoice Ninja, I tried Crater. I tried Invoice Lion. I've tried probably 7 or 8 different invoice solutions that all seem to have Docker containers available out there and setups and things, and honestly none of them really worked well. Invoice Lion seemed to do okay, but as I got into the application I realized, well, okay, there's some configuration file somewhere where you're supposed to set up your initial users, but it's not really clear where that is when you're running it with Docker. So yeah, it's just really strange that I couldn't get any of these things to really function correctly. I don't generally have this much trouble getting something to work. I've probably been working on it for a few weeks now, but out of the gate I got Solid Invoice to work, and then I realized I'd screwed up a setting on the kind of initial install wizard, and so it made the UI not work correctly. So I went back to it and tried again and realized what I'd kind of done wrong. So I'm going to show you that today. I'm going to help you get Solid Invoice up and running, and I'm going to provide you a Docker Compose file that's going to help get everything going for you so that you don't have to really kind of fiddle and mess with it. If you go to Solid Invoice, I believe is what it is, Solid Invoice / Solid Invoice out there on Dockerhub, you'll find that they have an official image, but they say, you know, you need to set up your own MySQL database or whatever you're going to use. So instead I set up a Docker Compose that has all that stuff ready and good to go. So we'll kind of use that, and we'll use what I've got as a template. So today I'm going to set this up on a test server. So we'll go over to DigitalOcean. We're going to create a new droplet. This is what DigitalOcean calls their virtual private servers. Now, full transparency, I have affiliate links in the description for DigitalOcean, so if you sign up through my link, I get a credit, you get a credit. I think you get $50. I think it's $50 for a month, 30 days for you to try them out. So for this $5 droplet that we're going to use today, you'd be able to use it for a month. I would also get a credit for you signing up and sticking with it with DigitalOcean, so I just want to be clear about that. If you don't like DigitalOcean, if you've never used DigitalOcean, if you don't care about using DigitalOcean, feel free to use any virtual private server farm you want. Linode, Oracle's free tier thing, if you can get it set up correctly, great. If you want to host this at home, which the one that I have in production, I'm hosting from my home server, and I just use NGinX Proxy Manager to route that traffic straight to the home server, and that's what we'll kind of set up today. We're going to set up everything today that we need. We're going to set up our DigitalOcean droplet as a virtual private server, and then we're going to install Docker and Docker Compose on that thing, and then we're going to install NGinX Proxy Manager. We're going to set up a URL, a domain name for our server as well, and forward that traffic to the IP that we get from DigitalOcean here. And then we'll set up Solid Invoice with MySQL and make sure that everything is functioning correctly. And I'll walk you through the steps to make sure that you can get it up and running as well. It's very nice. It's very simple. It's meant for individuals and small businesses. If you're a massive company, this is probably not the invoicing solution for you. But if you're a small business looking for an invoicing solution that has email and the option for SMS, then this might be the thing you're looking for. So give it a shot. See what you think. It's open source. It's free to try. Solid Invoice does have a paid program where it's already set up online. All you have to do is go and sign up for their paid solution and you can use it. But if you're here, you're probably wanting to self-host, so we'll get into that right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my patrons over at Patreon and my subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much for all of your support. I love doing this channel. I love making this media and this content for you. I hope you enjoy it as well. I do post all of the videos now over at Patreon after one of my patrons made the suggestion, and I don't know why it didn't dawn on me before that. But if you're interested in seeing them through Patreon and getting a notification through Patreon instead of through YouTube, or hoping that YouTube's algorithms happens to show it to you, jump over and become a supporter on Patreon, patreon.com. I've got the links in the description and the show notes. I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. So we're here on DigitalOcean. We're going to create our droplet. I'm going to use a Ubuntu 2004 server, and you'll come down, you'll see that it's on the basic plan, and you'll see these options here, and it kind of pre-selects this one. I'm just going to jump over and click on this one right here, and then I'm going to select the $5 droplet right here. And I'm going to move on down. I don't need any disk storage. I'm going to use New York in this case. San Francisco is also fine. In fact, we can use San Francisco. They pre-selected it. Why not? I'm in the middle of the country, but you always want to pick somewhere that is physically, geographically close to your location, or as close as possible. I could probably also use Canada because it's very close. I'm in Texas, so these are all kind of similar distances away from me, so it doesn't really matter. But for you, pick somewhere that's geographically close to you. If you want a VPC network, you can set that up. I don't need to. And then we have additional options here as well, nothing that I need. And I'm not going to use SSH keys today. I'm going to use a password. So we'll go and use our password, and we're going to type in the password that we want. So I'm just going to use a strong password here. Let's see. Alright, there we go. We've got a password that we can use. So make sure you make a strong password. You have to get check marks all the way down the list there. And we're going to call this invoice.opensourceisawesome.com. And we're just going to leave it on one droplet, and we're going to say create. So while we're waiting on that to get created, we'll go over to our Hover domain registrar here, and we'll set up our actual domain name. Since I called that invoice, we'll go set it up. So inside of Hover, I go to the domain that I want to add an actual record for, and I go to DNS, and right here I'm just going to click on add an A record. I'm going to make sure it says A, and I called that invoice. And we're going to get the IP address here in just a minute, and we'll set this to 5 minutes while we're waiting. So let's go see if we've got that IP address ready. DigitalOcean's pretty fast about setting up servers. Yeah, copy that IP address, and we're going to paste it right here. And we're going to hit add. We just want to make sure that we actually got it added to the list here. So we see invoice, it's an A record, and there's our IP address. Great. So we're set for that part. So we're just going to open up a terminal. We'll just make that full screen. Let's make that font a little bigger, not that big. How about that? We're going to SSH over to our DigitalOcean droplet, and we're going to say yes, and we'll enter that password that we created. And there we go. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new directory. We're going to say mkdir, and we're just going to call this Solid Invoice. And we'll cd into that directory. And we're going to create a file called docker-compose.yaml, YML. And here we're going to paste in some Docker Compose text that I've already copied, and I'll kind of go through this with you guys. So first we say that it's version 3.3, and the DB is going to be MySQL, and it's version 5.7. So that's the image we're going to pull down from Dockerhub. Now right here it's home, Brian, Solid Invoice, but we don't need that. We actually just need it to be home, root, or we can just put // solid invoice db underscore data, and then is going to map to /var/lib/mysql. So this is where we're going to back up basically our database to a local file, a local folder here on our system. We're going to restart that MySQL always, so if something crashes, if something happens, it'll restart on its own. If we reboot the server, it'll restart. The MySQL database is going to be called Solid Invoice. We'll just leave that alone. Now this password, you should not leave this as password. If you go copy this and just paste it in to use, you should change this to a strong password inside of the quotes here. You can change this user to any user you want. It doesn't matter. Just change it to anything you want, but you can leave it Solid Invoice as well. And then again, you should change this password to a strong password. You should not leave it as password. I'm just using these as placeholders for our demonstration purposes. The next thing we're going to do is, once we've got the DB set, we're going to go to the app, and we're going to say Solid Invoice /Solid Invoice. That's the image that we want to pull down. So we want to pull down their official image. And it depends on the DB. So that's this part right up here. Next, we're going to map a port, which is 8000, and we're going to map that to port 80. We don't want to use port 80. Do not change this side to 80. Just leave it. You change it to anything else you want, just not 80, not 443. Make it any other port you want, but 8000 seems good. We're gonna fix this when we set up and get everything installed for NGinX Proxy Manager anyways, so just be aware of that. We've got it again as restart always, and then we name the volumes as DB data, and we set it as basically an empty object. So we're just going to save this with Control-O, and then we're going to hit Enter. We're going to exit with Control-X, and then we're going to make that directory db_data. If we do an ls, you see there's the directory and there's our file. Alright, we're going to clear that out. We're going to cd back to the main page here, and we're going to do mkdir npm for NGinX Proxy Manager. And we're going to cd into there with npm. and we're going to, again, nano docker -compose.yml. So we're just going to create our very straightforward install of NGinX Proxy Manager so that we can proxy the traffic, and NGinX is really going to handle that for us for Solid Invoice, which is going to be great. It'll work really nicely once we get everything ready, and it'll let us pull down Let's Encrypt certificates through HTTPS as well. So from here, we need to go back to our browser. We're going to open up a window, a new tab, and we're going to go find NGinX Proxy Manager. So I just like to go to the quick setup, and right here you can see here's his very simple Docker Compose file. So I just copy this, and then I go here and I paste with Control-Shift-V like Victor, and we'll just go back up and we'll just change some things up here. So you just need to understand that if you change any of these passwords, you need to come down here and change the associated password or username or database name to match. They have to match on both sides or this is not going to work. So you need to understand that. As far as Let's Encrypt, data, everything like that, it's mapping some folders. That's fine. Just leave those alone. Again, 80 and 443, we want that left alone. 81 is fine because that's how you access the web UI. So all of this stuff, you really shouldn't change anything here except what we're going to call this thing, which is the user. Change this to whatever user you want. I'm going to call this Brian. And then the MySQL password for that user, we're going to call PASSW0RD1. And right here, we're going to call this is NPM, that's fine. The MySQL name, that's fine. When we come down here, we need to make those match. So first of all, the root password, you should make this something really strong and really long. So something crazy. It's nothing you have to remember. That's the important thing to think of. The database is NPM. The user we changed, in my case, to Brian, so make sure you make it match whatever user you called your user. And then we're going to do password 1. Now, again, make that a strong password. Don't copy what I'm doing for these passwords. You want this to be a strong password. I'm just doing this again for example purposes. So kind of understand that. Everything else should be good. We're going to do Control-O and Enter to save it, and then Control-X to exit. So we're going to do CD one more time back to the root folder here, and we're going to go and get something real quick to run this. And basically we're going to go to GitHub, and I'll have all these links in the show notes so that you guys don't have to go find them manually. We're going to go to github.com/bmcgonag. If I can spell it correctly, it's my own name. You'd hope I could spell my own name correctly. I couldn't. Alright, github.com/bmcgonag. There we go. Now we've got it, and I'm going to go here to the Docker installs. And this is a Ubuntu 2004 server, so I've got this nice little script that makes it really easy. So I'm just going to highlight all of this and copy it in just a second here. So I want to get it all highlighted. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to create a file called install docker.sh, and I'm going to paste all of that in there. Make sure there's a line at the end that's blank. Go up to the top, make sure we didn't cut out any text, and really that's all we have to do. Control-O to save, and then press enter. Control-X to exit, and we can clear. And we're going to do /docker. If you don't want to make this executable, you have to do it this way. Install docker.sh, and just basically this // just says run this thing. Otherwise you have to make it executable. If you want to make it executable, or if you need to, you can do chmod and then +x and then that file name, and now we can just do / install docker.sh instead of // So either way, as long as you get it to run, it should be good to go. This thing will go out and pull down everything that we need. It'll install Docker, it'll install Docker Compose, and if you're running this the way you should, which is not as root, but as an actual user on the system, it'll add your user to the Docker group. So if you don't have Docker and Docker Compose already installed, this script will do that, and it will try to add your user to the Docker root, which is great, to the Docker group. So I'm running as root, which is not a safe practice. I'm just doing this again for speed and for us to be able to get to the video. But normally you would want to create another user and then log in as that user and have that user in the sudo group and then add them to the Docker group and so on. So just be aware of that. This thing is going to go out and do its thing, and we'll be right back. Alright, it's all done. Now if you see this last line that says you should log out and back in or reboot your system, this is for, again, if you're not logged in as the root user, and that will just basically make it take the group for Docker. So if your user got added to the Docker group, it won't work where you can just do Docker PS right away. You'll have to do sudo unless you log out and back in Docker PS. So if you don't do that, log out and back in, you'll have to use sudo. But if you just log out, log back in, it should take that group change, and now you can just use Docker PS as a regular user, and it'll do it. So just be aware of that. All right, we've got Docker installed, which is great. So now we're going to go back into our npm folder, and we're going to do Docker compose -y or up -d. Sorry, Docker compose up -d. This is going to go out and pull down the NGinX Proxy Manager stuff, the MySQL stuff that it needs, everything like that, which is great. This is what we want. We want NGinX Proxy Manager installed, so we'll get that installed first, and then we'll go and get it set up. And once that's going, we're going to get Solid Invoice set up so that everything works the way that we want. That says it's finished. It says everything's done, so if you get 2 dones at the end and no errors, that's probably a good sign. So we're going to go here, and we're just going to go to Invoice. Let's see. Invoice.opensourceisawesome.com, and then we're going to go to port 81 because that's where the actual web port is for this. So the first time we try to do this, we're going to log in as admin at admin.com, and then we're going to use CHANGEME, change me, as the default password. Let's see. No relevant user found. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. Let's go check out the NGinX Proxy Manager details here. Oh, at example.com, sorry. So admin at example.com, and then change me as the default password. Yeah, so we'll get logged in, and the first thing we're going to do is change that admin user. So put in a password or put in an email address that makes sense for you. And then admin is fine. You can put in your name if you want to. There we go. And then it wants you to change the password. So you're going to put in CHANGEME, so change me all together. And then put in a strong password so you can get logged in. And it should tell you if you don't have matching passwords. It looks like I did okay. And you can see right here, we've got me as a user. Great. So I'm not going to tell that to save for now, but I am going to log out. I'm going to log back in with my new credentials. We got to make sure we can get logged in. If you get logged back in, everything is going really well. That's a good sign. So you remember you got to go to port 81 and then do that setup real quick for NGinX Proxy Manager. So NGinX Proxy Manager is set. We're good to go there. Now we're going to go back to our terminal, and we're going to clear this out, and we're going to cd into Solid Invoices. So we've got 2 folders, right? If we go back, you'll see several things. We've got our install docker.sh. Once we've done that, we can get rid of that if you want to. If you're running Ubuntu, you probably have a snap folder. Just leave it there and ignore it. But we have the folder npm that we created, and we have the folder Solid Invoice that we created. We've already worked with this one and this one. Now we've got to go do this one. So we're going to do cd Solid Invoice, and we're going to do docker-compose up-d, just like the other one. We're going to let it pull down those images and get everything set up. Now once it says that everything is done on both of those, we should be ready to go actually access our Solid Invoice online site. So we need to do a couple of things, and I'm going to walk you through this because I did hit a little snag with this the first time, like I said. We're going to open up a new tab, and we're going to go to invoice.opensourceisawesome.com : now we can go to 8,000 here to start out, and we get to our Solid Invoice site, and right off the bat you can see that it does a bunch of checks. So you're going to see a couple of warnings here. I would not worry about this first warning, it's fine. You're going to go back to NGinX Proxy Manager, and you're going to add a new host. So we're going to go to hosts, and we're going to go to proxy host. We're going to add a host, and we're going to call this exactly what it is, invoice. In my case, opensourceisawesome.com. So whatever you name yours, type that in here. double check your spelling, and then hit tab or hit enter to make this little chip. If you don't have that little chip, it's going to get it out of that box. So next thing we're going to do is put in the address. So this is going to be the IP address of our server. So we're just going to go here. We're going to go to DigitalOcean. We can just copy this IP address. We can come back and we can paste it in. Now, if you're working at home, it's going to be more like a private IP address or something. That's fine. Just put in the IP address of the server. And then we're going to put that as 8000. Now, if you change that port for some reason, you need to put in whatever port number you used, okay? You can't use the same port number if you changed it in the Docker Compose file, but if you didn't change it, then put in 8000. We're going to say cache assets, WebSocket support, block common exploits, and publicly accessible. Now, before we do anything else, we're just going to hit save. Now, we're going to click on this thing just to make sure it opens. And it does. We don't want to do anything here. We just want to close that out. Go back to our manager. And we're going to go here to edit. We're going to go over to SSL. And we're going to click on this down button. And we're going to click request a new SSL certificate. Force SSL. Make sure your email is inside of this box. If you didn't use your email for your username, make sure you put in your email address that you want for Let's Encrypt. And then agree to their terms. And then hit save again. This is going to go tell Let's Encrypt, hey, I want a certificate for this site. And Let's Encrypt's going to say, okay, let me go check it out on port 80 and see if I can reach it. Now it's going to say, oh, hey, I found it. Let me go take you on HTTPS. So we're going to click on this. It should open up HTTPS with a valid certificate. And there it is. So there we go. We're good. If everything has checks, that's a good sign. We're just going to click on next here at the bottom right. And then the next thing is we need to do some setup. So it wants to know what kind of database we're going to use. Well, we're going to use MySQL. That's what we set. For the host, we need to know what this is called. We don't want to use that. But we did set up a stack with Docker Compose. So the good news is we can use the MySQL name for that stack. So we can go here, back to our terminal. And we'll clear that out. We can do Docker PS. And it's going to list all of our different applications. Now, this is kind of messy because it's big, but what we're looking for is this name right here, which is Solid Invoice _DB_1. That's what we want to put there on the website. So we're just going to type that in. Solid Invoice _DB_1. Make sure we... Now, you can see I've typed this in before, but make sure you spell it correctly. Port 3306 is good. We can just leave that as root since we did set up a root password. So let's put in the password that we set. If you can't remember what passwords you set for the root user or the user for MySQL, you can go back into your terminal here, and you can go back into Solid Invoice, or you can just say cat./solidinvoice dockercompose.yaml. And you can look. So we just set very simple passwords. Hopefully you set one that's very complex. But we can just use password. In this case is what I set. It's terrible. Should never do that. But there we go. So I'm just going to type in PASSWORD. And then finally, the database name finally is Solid Invoice. Now here we're going to set up our email. I don't know why it does this, but it doesn't seem to take because we have to go set it up again in the UI. But it has required fields that we have to fill out, so it's fine. So mine is box.fixitdelrio, oops, right there, fixitdelrio.com. My port is 587. The encryption level is TLS. My user is there. And then I've got to go get my password. I'm going to paste in my password and I'm going to hit next. Now this thing's going to try to go out and set up the database. It'll let you know with 2 check marks whether it was able to do that or not. I'm just going to close this because it keeps asking. And we're going to hit next. Once you've got the check marks, it could take longer depending on the system that you're setting this up on and whether it's SSDs or spinning drives. So be patient. It may take longer than what you just saw. We're going to hit next. And right here, I want you to set up your first, basically, business. Oh, right here, I want you to set up your system settings. So we've got the locale, so we're going to pick, in my case, English. United States is what I'm looking for. Yes. My currency is the US dollar, so you'll have to kind of check to see if this has everything that you're going to need for your business, but hopefully it will. The base URL, in this case, we don't want that to have that port. So we're going to take that off because we're going to go set up NGinX Proxy Manager to send this over. So we're also going to tell it HTTPS for solidinvoice.com. Now, before we hit the next on this screen, we're going to go set up NGinX Proxy Manager, because if we do this, we won't be able to get to this thing, and then Let's Encrypt could have a hard time getting to the site, and so on and so forth. So we want to be really careful about what order we do this in. So we're going to leave this here. We're going to make sure we have HTTPS on there. We're going to make sure we don't have the port on there. We're going to put in a username for our first user here, and I'm just going to use my email. You're going to put in the email address, which is exactly the same as what I just typed, and then you're going to make a password for your user. Once you hit next, just give it a minute to try to set up your admin user and make sure everything looks good. Now it says you need to go set up this PHP cron job. I didn't do this, and it sends my emails. Now if you're wanting it to send some kind of reminder emails to people, that may be what this is for, but it says go set this up to do it every 5 minutes. But if you set this up, it's going to send it like every minute of every hour of every day. It's going to do something. So this seems a little frequent. It's not correct for every 5 minutes. But if you want to go set it up, you'll have to get into the actual system and then set up cron and then make sure that you run this thing and then check it and make sure it runs, everything like that. So I would check this command before I set up the cron job just to make sure the command runs and that you have it correct. I didn't do this, so just be aware of that. Once you're ready, again, you can get rid of that. You're going to log in, and we're going to use the email account that we just set up, and we're going to put in our password, and there we go. We've got Solid Invoice up and running, and you'll notice it's got the actual Let's Encrypt certificate there. Now, as you go through Solid Invoice, there's a lot to this program, which is really great because it's not super simple, but it's not super difficult either. But right out of the gate, System, I would come over and go into System Settings. And right here, you probably want to change your company name. So mine is Fixit Del Rio. If you have a logo file, click on here. You can browse your file system and go find that logo file and put it on there. I don't have one right now that I can use from here, but there you go. You've got an option to use a logo file as well. If you have VAT, so taxes, you can put that here. A VAT number, you can put that here. If you want to change the currency at this point, you can, but I've got US dollar. That's great. So your contact details as part of the company. So again, you can just fill this out. Now yours could be different. So you could have like payments at, or sales at, or some finance at, depending on what you're doing and how you're setting this up. You could have different things than me. I just use the same email because it's easier. Phone numbers, if you have phone numbers, 888-888-9878. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up there. Street address, you could put in 123 Sesame Street. My place, Texas, and there we go. And then your country, again, you can just click on this if you want to get to the country list, and you can go find your country just by typing. So it filters down pretty nicely and pretty quickly. Hit save, and you're set there. As you move down to this left list, you've got different things that you can set up in your system settings. So if you want to do quotes, you can set that up. If you're going to do invoices, you can set this up as well. If you want to have these things automatically sent to someone else as well, you can do that. So you can add BCC addresses, and you can comma separate and add multiple addresses, I believe. Maybe semicolon separate. Just depends on the SMTP server that you're using, whether it's Exchange, that kind of thing. But in this case, one address is all I need. And then click on Save. And now we get to the email setup. So you remember how I said I'm going to set up email? You see it doesn't look like it seems to have taken. So it wants both. It says, again, from name Solid Invoice, I want it to be Fixit Del Rio. And here I want it to be me at Fixit Del Rio. And then down here, again, I have to choose SMTP and fill out my email information again. I don't know why it doesn't seem to pass that over, or why it doesn't take from where we did it in the wizard, but for some reason it doesn't. So just don't forget to go in and reset it up again, and then create a test client to send yourself an email and make sure that it's working. That's definitely something that's very important. Mine does work with TLS, even though my email is start TLS, port 587, and TLS does work. If you're using SSL, then you'd pick 443 or 995, depending on what you're doing. I think 995 is incoming, so probably 443 and SSL. Just kind of find out what your SMTP server settings are and go through and fill this out so that you have your correct email settings set up. Once you've done that, if you have SMS and you have a Twilio account, then you can set up SMS here as well. So you can basically use this to send a text message out with the invoice information, and it basically sends a link where the user can get back to it. That's why you want to have this URL set up, and you want it to be a public URL that can get through into your private network if you're running this at your home, because when they get the invoice, I give them a little preview, but they can click on the invoice email and it'll bring them to this page in the web so they can see the full invoice and everything like that. So also be aware that you can set that up, and you should set that up that way. That's why I'm showing you how to do it. But you can do SMS if you want to. You can set up basically different system themes and things like that, so you can set up different information here, and then save that if you want. The default is fine with me. And then notifications. So if you want, if you set up SMS and email, you can set up both. You can pick not to get it. You can set up one or the other for different things, and then again save that. So there's your system settings basically. You'll also want to go in and set up any tax rates for your area. So if you have different tax rates for different things, you'll want to go in and set that up and make sure you can apply those in your invoices and quotes. If you have more than one user that you want to be able to log in, you can go into the users area and add more users. So the add button is over here on the right, and you can basically go through the form and it'll add more users and everything like that as well for the system. And then finally, payment methods, which is really important. If you want to get paid, it's important to have your payment methods set up. They have PayPal checkout, PayPal Express checkout, they have Stripe checkout, they have Stripe.js. I mean, they just have quite a few different ways of getting paid here. So if you don't have an account for one of these now and you'd like to be able to get paid easily through a credit card or debit card, or through these PayPal, through these systems where it holds their money for them, this is definitely a great thing to have set up, and it may be worthwhile to have more than one set up so that your user has a choice as well. But I think this is great that they set this up and that it's ready to go. You just need to go in and put in your credentials and get everything set on the other side, on the PayPal side or on the Stripe side, so that your account is ready and really set to go. So when you send this out, your person gets an email, they click on it, they say, oh yeah, hey, I can use Stripe to pay this thing, great, I can use my credit card, boom, you're paid. It's not a thing where you're waiting for a check, or they're sending you a check, or the check is in the mail kind of business. PayPal the same way, right? I've had customers for a long time who paid me through PayPal, through my other invoicing system, which was great. I loved it. It was immediate. They loved it because it was immediate, and it was really easy for them to pay me that way. So definitely recommend getting those things set up as well. But yeah, overall, I mean, Solid Invoice seems like a really solid system, just to kind of put that on there. I really like it. But yeah, you've got all your settings there. Once you've done your settings, really you've kind of got just the system after that. So you can track your payments. You can see what payments you've received here. You can go into the invoices section and see what invoices you have, and then you can create new invoices and you get summaries. It's got really nice summary pages, but you can go in and edit invoices and resend invoices to people in case they say, well, I didn't get it, or it might have gone to junk and they missed it and it got deleted before they saw it. Same way with quotes. If you generate quotes, you can do the same things there. And then right here, you've got kind of the overview area, I guess you'd say, of clients. So you can go in and add your clients, so you can keep track of your clients and their information, the person who's responsible for getting things paid. Make sure that their email is in there so that they get your invoices so that you can get paid. That's really important when you're running an invoice system, is getting paid. That's the whole idea. And then whenever you're done, you can always just go back to your dashboard. If you just click on the little logo here, you go back to the dashboard and you can see really a nice overview. And as you start filling things in, it will start to look a little bit better and have a little bit more information, which is great. But you can see very quickly, like, what things are pending, you know, how many are outstanding, like haven't been paid on time, how many active clients do you have, and so on. So I think overall, this is just a nice overview. It's not the snazziest looking. There's some with some really great dashboards, but again, the dashboard isn't anything if you can't get the software running. What good does it do you? This software was not hard to get running. I really just overall think it's a really great piece of software, and I've enjoyed using it. So I hope you guys will as well. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.